If you're not familiar with McGee yet, you might not be living under a rock. As of early May 2024, he has under 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify. He doesn't have a viral single that you'd hear all over TikTok or any other social media platform. Word of mouth is a great way for an artist's music to spread, but unfortunately for McGee, a lot of people don't even know how to say his name out loud. They must not have read his first album's title. I can tell you right now that it won't be like this for much longer. He's got producer and writer credits with artists as wide as Drake, The Kid Laroi, and Dijon. He's getting cosigns from music legends like Tyler the Creator and zeitgeisty celebrities like Kendall Jenner. He sold out back-to-back nights at the Fonda in Los Angeles and is embarking on a sold-out tour of the rest of the United States as we speak, off the strength of an album that has become many people's favorite of 2024. Just take a look at Anthony Fantano's review. Not the score itself, which is a strong 6 out of 10, and by Fantano's scale is pretty decent, but the comments section, where people are yelling that Fantano got it totally wrong and rated it way too low. The Cult of McGee is rapidly expanding, and everyone who touches this album seems to come out changed on the other side. So let's take a look at just who this guy is, and watch the journey from a kid in New Jersey to a genuine auteur. But before we dive in, if you like videos about music, I drop one a week. I would really love if you guys could like and subscribe. If you want to see the videos early, go to my Instagram, HADJI, throw me a follow, and join my broadcast channel because I post all my videos in there one day early. Also, I've got a single coming out this month, so stay tuned. Alright, back to the video. Michael Gordon was born and raised in the Garden State, which makes sense because his music sounds like driving down the New Jersey Turnpike but in an alternate universe. He grew up as a jazz kid, and he also spent time going to the Jersey Shore and playing rock gigs in bars. He told Complex back in 2018 that he used to play in a trio. That trio was called 3 South Benson, which I was able to find some video of on the internet. There's young Mike right there, shredding the solo on Leonard Skinner's Freebird at a gig at the Hard Rock in Hollywood, Florida. Got the guitar behind his head and all that. He said in his interview that he kind of grew apart from them because he was looking for more creative leeway than they were willing to give him. So early on in high school, he started recording his own stuff. He would play all the instruments himself. After cutting his teeth on his own, in a process that he said helped him learn a lot about himself, he wanted to take the next step. He had his sights set on becoming a touring guitarist, a gun for hire in the studio. And so, like many with the same idea, he set out to Los Angeles to attend USC's Thornton School of Music. According to this old Facebook page, he was looking at a couple other schools, and he even did an audition video. Would have been cool to see what that's like. There was one problem to this plan. To a lot of people, Michael didn't play the guitar the right way. So according to him, this led to him getting frequently fired from gigs. It's not a surprise that he likes to bend the rules. In that Complex interview, he named Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton as two of his biggest influences on the guitar, specifically because they played the instrument in a way that many thought was not the right way to play it. Jimi is infamous for, among many things, playing a right-handed guitar upside down as a left-handed guitar and restringing it. As a fellow left-handed guitarist, I gotta say, more power to him. Eric Clapton is well known for being one of the best in his generation at getting emotion out of the instrument. So when you watch what McGee does today, it all kind of makes sense. In 2024, it's funny to imagine an artist turning down bringing McGee with him on tour, or having him in the studio laying down his guitar parts, given that he is now one of the most beloved rising musicians in the industry. But when it comes to touring guitarists, most acts are just looking for someone who can play the parts how they sound on the record. You're hiring a chameleon. Someone with chops, but not necessarily someone who's going to put their own spin on things. In the studio, it can vary a little more, but still, many are going to call in a guitarist looking for a particular thing, and it might not be the thing that McGee is so damn good at, which is getting emotion out of the guitar. I'm jumping ahead a little bit in his discography, but let's look at the way he played that guitar on his song Dimeback when he performed it on the Colors Studio channel on YouTube. This was in 2020. Bringing a guitar onto the Colors performance is already something that separates him a lot from other artists on the platform, but it makes sense, given that ever since the beginning of his career, the guitar was his preferred form of expression. In the 2018 Complex interview, he was talking about how when he moved to LA, he had no intention of singing, that he was self-conscious about his voice, and that he can't believe people are paying to come see him sing. So it must have been extra funny for him to find himself on the Colors platform, where people are kind of known for showing off their pipes. But if this video with no audio isn't really doing it justice, the comments really underscore how emotive the guitar playing is. This one commenter points out the ways in which the guitar playing is conveying the somberness of the song that you would hear if you turned into the lyrics and you heard lines like, "Nothing ever lasts, I wish I had the time back." Or as this one commenter put it, the guitar itself is a feeling that can only be described through music. I can't explain it, that just reminds me of that one Charlie XCX meme. And here's a bonus comment of a guy who thought the Colors Studio got repainted every time a different artist came through. Movie magic is crazy. Can you imagine if someone was really doing that? So faced with rejection, Michael decided to do the damn thing himself and take it into his own hands. That's where McGee was born. The first project we got was 8AMs in 2016, which is now only on YouTube. Per the written bio on Genius, this project was made during his freshman year at USC, along with some of his classmates. Listening to it now, knowing where he's going to go musically, you can hear it all over in the production, the textures, chord choices, and the general musical chops. What doesn't sound the same to me at least is his voice. You can hear that while he sounded decent, he hadn't fully come into his own as a vocalist, and that aligns with what he was telling Complex 2 years later about his singing. Although by then, he said he loves singing, and if you listen to his 2018 projects, starting with his album Mk.gee, you could tell. This is where my personal journey with McGee's music began as well. The song You on Mk.gee was a Spotify algorithm fave back in 2018 and 2019, so it found its way into mine and it became my 27th most played song of 2019. As a project, Mk.gee is a huge step forward from 8am's. You is a certified banger, and so is the other single, I Know How You Get. In revisiting the project, I really like Priorities and Over Here as well. You, of course, got played by Frank Ocean on Blonded Radio, which only increased all the hype around what he was doing. This is top quality indie stuff, even if it isn't as singular and genre defining as what was going to come next. Some of the synthier production on here reminds me of bands like Phoenix or Empire of the Sun, and some of the noodly guitar riffs on here remind me of artists that I would never think of comparing 2024 McGee to, like Mac DeMarco, Conan Moccasin, and Still Woozy. McGee was playing with the big boys in the indie space at that time, at least in terms of quality, but he hadn't truly separated himself with his own sound yet. The following EP from the same year, Fool, feels a bit more intentional, albeit less anthemic than McGee. He said he wanted the listeners to live in the pockets of silence in the project, and he tried to stress the push and pull, the ebb and flow of the music. It's this kind of high concept stuff that separates McGee from your average musician. It sounds analogous to the way that a visual artist might play with space. Sometimes the lack of something in an image is the something. He also experimented with a lot of new toys, including, surprisingly, the acoustic guitar. He said he used to absolutely hate it because of the douche culture that was associated with it. You know, the college freshman playing Wonderwall on the green type thing. But he grew to love it by manipulating the way it sounded and pushing it to sound less and less like an actual acoustic guitar, trying to make it sound all crunchy and weird. And that's a precursor for the direction that McGee was going to take in his music. In 2019, he signed to Interscope, and he released a single Untitled, which is a banger, and I always thought it was kind of funny it was Untitled, because it felt like one of the most topical songs in his discography at that point. He's singing about star signs, and horoscopes, and dating in your 20s in a very dry and witty way. Right after the pandemic happened in May 2020, he followed that single up with the album A Museum of Contradiction, and although Untitled isn't on it, they're sonically kind of part of the same world, at least to me. This project represents a big step for McGee, moving away from other indie contemporaries and more towards auteurs like J. Paul. The only collaborator on this project is Vegan, a British producer who's probably most well known for working with Frank Ocean on Blonde and Endless. In many ways, this project feels like the birth of the McGee that somebody who started listening to him today would understand. In an interview he did with Lithium magazine in July 2020, he said he viewed making this project as a bunch of sessions that I had with my different personalities rather than a bunch of McGee songs. So there's a lot of different sides of myself found in this tape, and they're collaborating with each other, kind of like P.I. versus T.I.P. Much like how the Fool EP was all about playing with space, A Museum of Contradiction was about paradox. He was influenced by albums like The Flaming Lips' The Soft Bulletin, which is a rock album by name that doesn't actually have a lot of rock guitars. It's telling that the song Dimeback is the one older song that he still plays live today, and also the one he chose to do on Colors. I saw him in Brooklyn in October last year, and he played it then, and I just saw him in LA last month, and he played it again. It's dreamy, and the guitar strumming and chord choices match up really well with what he's got going on now. It feels like the bridge between the old McGee and the new McGee. Other tracks on A Museum of Contradiction are a little glitchier and more textured than some of his earlier work. Personally, this project means a lot to me because it came out right in the middle of the pandemic, like the peak of quarantine, not seeing anybody. And I had this bike route I would go on every single day, and I would stop and smoke a J at the exact same point. And that whole experience, the bike loop and the stopping, was the exact length of this album. So I ran this album back and forth 100 times. Listening to the album always transports me right back there, whether I want to go or not. There was a nearly 4-year gap between A Museum of Contradiction and his next album, 2-Star and the Dream Police. But he wasn't just chilling in that time period. Instead, McGee was helping serve as an architect for hire for other musicians. He co-produced Omar Apollo's Hey Boy with Kali Uchis in 2020. He worked on the song Mountains by Charlotte Day Wilson, which you may not be familiar with that song, but you might know Fair Trade by Drake, which samples it. so McGee appears in the credits on Fair Trade as well. I'm not sure where he stands in the beef, but the most notable collaboration to me is McGee's incredible collaborative relationship with Dee-John, who, if you ask me, is one of the eminent songwriters of our time. I feel like I want to do a video on Dee-John soon, so maybe I'll save some of his backstory for that. Let me know if you want to see that. But long story short, his album Absolutely is one of the strongest releases since it came out, and McGee is a big part of that story. He produced the intro Big Mike's, the single Many Times, the interlude Noah's highlight reel, and he has writing credits on the emotional, gut-wrenching song Rodeo Clown. Regardless of where he landed on the credits of the actual recorded album, he was a big part of the album's experience, which was captured in a 25-minute performance video that's available on YouTube. It's chaotic and hypnotic, and undoubtedly the best part of that video is watching how McGee and Dee-John interact and play off each other. McGee finds himself on the piano, on the guitar, often mouthing the words at Dee-John as Dee-John sings them. Maybe it sounds corny, but the video is the perfect encapsulation of the power of making music in a room with your friends. As listeners, we feel like we carry the real jewel around with us when we listen to these songs that we love, but anyone who makes music would probably agree that the real true essence of that song was making it in a room with either by yourself or with people you love, or just like random fucking people. As an artist myself, anytime I watch this video, I reconsider my relationship with my music and just how I view my own art. Often, especially earlier in my career, I viewed a day in the studio as a success if I left with a song that I liked, or maybe just one that I thought would do good, and if I didn't leave with that, then in my head, I didn't succeed that day. I'm not beating myself up for that. I think a lot of artists could probably relate to that mindset, but now I view any time I spend creating as valuable, regardless of the outcome. If I allowed myself to be free and to try new things and to express myself, then I won. I believe I owe a lot to both McGee and Dee-John for fixing my mindset. Not only did McGee find himself prominently involved in the album and the video, but he also went on tour with Dee-John for the project, which I had the lovely experience of seeing live in 2022. Reading him talk about how he would often get fired from tour gigs earlier in his career made me think about that show again. It must be so cool to not only get the opportunity to do the thing you always dreamed of doing as a kid, but to get to do it with someone who not only allows you to be yourself, but prefers it and praises you when you do it. I wondered to myself, purely from the outside and as a fan, at that point in time, if maybe that was going to be McGee's destiny. Touring, living in the studio, helping artists like Dee-John see their visions through. And he got some big gigs after the success of Absolutely, including producing a song for the Kid Laroi, Kids Are Growing Up. I can't say that I've listened to a lot of the Kid Laroi before, but I can tell you that song kind of bangs. But as a fan of McGee's solo work, especially a Museum of Contradiction, I was selfishly hoping that he was going to push his artist project further, and thankfully he did in 2023, when he returned with Candy and How Many Miles, introducing us to the character of 2-Star and the era of the Dream Police. He said in an interview with Mk.gee of BBC One that his goal was to make a project that feels recognizable, that feels like you've been there before, but there's no way that you could have. An eerie feeling, for sure. Candy is an amazing example of this, because the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, this reminds me of that song from the 80s. You know, that song. That one. And I was like, why can't I name the song? Because there wasn't a song. It's nostalgic, but it's futuristic at the same time. It's beautiful and sweet, but also apocalyptic and strange. A big part of the reason that McGee wanted to create something like this, according to what he told Mk.gee in the interview, was that there's a fascination right now in the music industry with things that are human or things that are relatable. He lamented that many artists will spend 3 years trying to make something feel more human. Leave this thing in so that it sounds human. It's crazy to him that people would have to deliberately go and try to make something sound human. If you think about that, doesn't that make the original thing not very human? So while many artists zig in one direction, he wanted to zag, make something that feels alien. What we got was 2-Star and the Dream Police. Now on R&R Digital, which happens to be the same label as Dee-John, McGee has fully found himself as a solo artist. While older songs that I love on Museum of Contradiction felt like cool ideas taped together in an interesting way, on this project the writing really shines through. Alessis, which is to me a song about the intricacies of dating and commitment in your 20s, shows depth and concept in the lyrics that we got a taste of on songs like Untitled, but hadn't fully been seen across the whole catalog. One of my favorite writing tropes that I pick up when listening to McGee's music is his appreciation for sports with like a tinge on Americana. He said in the interview that he wanted the album to feel American, like a high school, and what the hell is more American than high school football? His song Dimeback, the title, is taken from another word for the position of safety in football. The original title of the song was probably Dime Quarterback, and the reason why I say that is because the Colors version was uploaded first before the song came out on the album, and that version in the title it's called Dime Quarterback. That title makes it feel like something out of a playbook in an old Madden video game. Even in the 2020 interview he did when he was talking about the quarantine, he called it a 7th inning stretch, which for those who aren't into baseball, basically this like break period that people take in the middle of the 7th inning, where everybody listens to Take Me Out to the Ball Game. And on one of the standout tracks on the new album, Are You Looking Up, when he yelps, "And if you want to go, then baby go wide," which is football terminology for a receiver running as far as he can to try to catch a pass, it evokes that same imagery of a big, green American football field. He said he wanted to pay homage to Jersey Rock, which features artists like Bruce Springsteen and Bon Jovi, so it's references like these that really tie it all together. Per the interview, another goal of the album was to create music that feels like a liminal space. One of the ways he achieved that is through musical mixed media, in a sense. He uses bits and pieces of live recordings to add textures to the songs, not necessarily to make them more human, like a pop artist would if they left a mistake in or a breath on purpose, but more to create a very specific type of contrast. He makes moments feel bigger in songs, but without actually playing louder or adding unnecessary layers. He instead structures the songs to create the implication of a big moment. Listen to the song I Want, and that solo that comes in around the 2.5-minute mark is the perfect example. There aren't many layers there, just insane sound design, most of which is happening outside of the computer, using analog equipment. He said in an Instagram live back when A Museum of Contradiction dropped, shout out to the guy who screen recorded this and uploaded it, that while he uses Ableton, he tries to stay as outside of the DAW as possible, instead fiddling with gear to create unique sounds. When you look at his stage setup, you see what I mean. When we talk about why other artists love McGee so much, and why he's likely your favorite artist's favorite artist, it's for these details that I've just mentioned. The intention in the music, the persistence on doing things your way, staring down rejection at every turn, and still choosing to follow your instinct, rather than selling out or just conforming to what the music industry expects of you. The live show he's currently touring is the culmination of that. He's on stage with some amazing talents, including Andrew H., who's in a band called Inc. No World. Might be Incorporated No World, I've never said it out loud, with his brother Daniel. One of the cooler things I noticed in the comments of the Colors video is someone comparing the music to Inc., so it's pretty cool to see them working together now. The LA show was packed with musicians and industry heads, as one would expect because this is basically church for them. Or I should say us. I mean, I was there too. He's gonna keep growing in popularity with people like Tyler the Creator and Kendall Jenner posting him and praising him. And while I've seen some people worried that impending popularity will ruin the fun of listening to him or taint it in some way, I gotta say that's a ridiculous sentiment. Maybe it's the artist in me talking, but don't we want the guys who we think are geniuses to get rich? But we shouldn't be worried about that with McGee anyway. When he took the stage at the show I was at, he shouted something along the lines of, "We're giving you the real thing." Every step he's taken in his career has shown a commitment to that, and I don't really think that's going to change. So yeah, if you haven't heard 2-Star of the Dream Police, or if you just got hip and you haven't heard a Museum of Contradiction or even pronounced McGee, highly recommend checking it all out. This is HADJI.